Hello, dear viewers of my video. I hope you enjoy watching it and look forward to your feedback in the comments. I pressed submit at exactly 2:38 p.m. That single click was supposed to be the most triumphant moment of my life. 10 years of research, 14 different prototypes, 2 failed startups, 1 panic attack in a stairwell, and a mountain of code written across continents. It had all led here. I'd finally filed the patent for the core predictive algorithm I'd nurtured like a child, the one that could reshape real-time financial modeling, insurance calibration, and, if applied correctly, predict economic shockwaves before they happened. It was elegant, recursive, and terrifyingly efficient. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, imagining what would come next. Maybe an internal email from the R&D board. Maybe even a private message from Leon Mercer, the CEO himself. Cold, strategic Leon, with his polished Oxford accent and steepled fingers. I imagined him saying something like, "Impressive work, Amelia. Groundbreaking." That would have been enough. I didn't need applause, just acknowledgement. Instead, I got an email with no subject line and 3 words in the body. Conference Room 3B. I stared at it. The timestamp was 2:40 p.m. Something prickled in my spine. I didn't even have time to think. HR doesn't wait for feelings. I walked down the carpeted hallway, still in that half-foggy post-adrenaline haze. My heels clicked like gunshots against the tile when I stepped into the meeting room. Marlene from HR was already seated, hands folded tight like she was holding onto some invisible lifeline. Across from her was Leon. Not even his usual smug half-smile. Just unreadable glass. "Amelia," Marlene began. "Thank you for joining us." I sat slowly. "Is this about the submission?" A pause. Then that phrase, the one that should be outlawed in every language. "As part of a strategic restructure, your position has been eliminated." I blinked. "What?" Leon didn't even flinch. "Effective immediately. You're letting me go?" "We appreciate everything you've done for the company," Marlene added, her voice carefully scripted. I turned to Leon. "I just submitted the most important IP this company's ever seen." His eyes didn't move. "And that submission was made through official Brightwell channels, using company resources. Per your employment agreement, all work generated within the scope of your position is considered company property." He said it like he was reading from a brochure. My mouth went dry. "That's not—" I stopped myself. "You're firing me after I gave you the algorithm." "It's not personal," Marlene said too softly. Of course it wasn't. It was never personal to people like them. It was profit, power, and I just handed them a billion-dollar algorithm wrapped in a bow. "I see," I said. And I did. I saw everything clearly for the first time. I walked out without another word. No shouting, no accusations, just silence. But inside, something cracked. Not in a brittle way. It was the quiet, mechanical snap of a lock sliding into place. Back at my desk, my account had already been deactivated. A cardboard box sat there, waiting like some tragic prop. I packed my things without looking at anyone. People noticed, sure, but no one spoke. Cowards. When I reached into my drawer for my personal backup drive, I hesitated. Not the encrypted one they knew about. That was a decoy. I took the real one from under the lining. Just a black USB, disguised as nothing. But inside it, everything. I walked out of that building for the last time at 3:14 p.m. By 3:30, I was home in my apartment, laptop open, nerves vibrating like a tuning fork. I logged into the patent portal, and that's when I saw it. Inventor, Leon Mercer. My name had been deleted from the record, replaced, revised. My algorithm, my life's work, now attributed to a man who'd never even glanced at my whiteboard notes. The edit timestamp was 2:44 p.m., 6 minutes after I submitted it. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed, just once, sharp and cold. That laughter scared me more than the dismissal. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. Instead, I opened a second terminal. Because what they didn't know was this: the patent they stole wasn't the complete version. The algorithm had a buried layer, a silent license binding mechanism I called the Phantom Clause. It was registered under a private subsidiary I'd incorporated 5 years ago, something they never found in their background check. That clause required biometric authentication from me to operate at full capacity. Without it, any deployment would function in a limited sandbox for 7 days before it collapsed. It was my kill switch, my license, and it was still mine. They thought I'd hand them the crown jewels and walk away in tears. They had no idea they'd just set a bomb ticking beneath their empire. I brewed a fresh cup of coffee and pulled out the old notebook I kept behind my bookshelf, the one that still had the original version of the algorithm scribbled in ink. Then I started planning. Not just revenge. A reckoning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of my apartment, my laptop balanced on my knees, the only light in the room glowing cold and blue against the walls. Around me were boxes I'd never unpacked, photos I never hung, pieces of a life I'd promised myself I'd get to later. Later never came. At 3:17 a.m., I pulled out the voicemail I hadn't listened to in years. The one I'd saved, archived, encrypted like a relic I couldn't bear to touch. "Hi, honey. I know you're busy, always busy, but I just wanted to say I love you. Don't worry about tomorrow. We'll see each other soon." My mother's voice, soft with a hint of rasp. The recording ended with a click. That click, I'd realized long ago, was the last time I'd ever hear her voice. She died the next morning, and I hadn't been there. I'd missed the flight. I was sitting in a temperature-controlled server room at Brightwell, trying to manually reboot a crashed cluster using a protocol I'd written 2 years earlier. There had been a major outage on the West Coast grid. No one else could fix it. So, I did. And in doing so, I missed her funeral. I missed holding her hand. Missed the chance to say goodbye. I'd told myself for years that it was worth it, that building something revolutionary demanded sacrifice, that I was laying the foundation for a future where her voice could echo in every sustainable model powered by my code. But as I sat in that flickering light, staring at my erased name on the patent portal, all I could think was, she died thinking I'd come, and I didn't. The company had taken everything, not just my work, my time, my life, my soul. And in return, I was a ghost in their story, a line of forgotten code, my name never once mentioned in the quarterly reports, not even a footnote in Leon's keynote presentations when he bragged about our tech to shareholders. "Our AI-led infrastructure model," he'd say, "our predictive calibration framework." Ours. Like he'd ever written a line of it. The irony was, whenever something broke, I was the first call. They called me the wizard, the fixer, even the whisperer behind closed doors. But never in public, never when it counted. When the system stabilized, the credit flowed upward. When it failed, the blame circled downward. They loved my brain, but they hated admitting it belonged to someone, especially someone like me. Quiet, precise, forgettable in a crowd. I didn't schmooze. I didn't play politics. I didn't post thought leader threads on LinkedIn. I just worked, and that made me invisible. But not anymore. I opened my encrypted archive and scrolled through the folders. Inside were hundreds of files, drafts, commits, notes, video recordings of early design sessions I'd logged, just in case I ever needed proof. I selected the one labeled V1 ORIG Sovereignty and uploaded it to my private server. Then I opened the script I'd started writing the night before. It wasn't just a failsafe anymore. It was a message, a signature written in logic, one they could never erase, because if they wanted to pretend I never existed, I'd make sure the world felt what happened when I was gone. My name was going to mean something. Not later, not posthumously, now. Because I'd missed the last chance to say goodbye to the person who mattered most, and I refused to let anyone bury me twice. I learned early that in tech, visibility isn't protection, it's exposure. If they can see you, they can target you. They can discredit you, sideline you, steal from you with a smile and a non-disclosure agreement. What they can't see? They can't manipulate. They can't erase. And so, I stopped being visible. I became strategic. Long before Leon deleted my name, long before the HR scripts and soft-voiced betrayal, I had already begun planning for a version of this future. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I did, in the worst possible way. I trusted them to act exactly as they had, with ambition, with greed, and without conscience. 8 months ago, while Brightwell was polishing its Series C investor deck and preparing its next product launch, I booked a flight to Liechtenstein. The official purpose? A lecture at a tech and ethics symposium in Vaduz. But the real reason? I needed jurisdictional distance, a place where intellectual property could be structured, encrypted, and protected beyond the reach of any single company's legal department. I wore gray that day, bland, forgettable, the kind of outfit no one would remember. I carried nothing but a slim leather case with 2 documents, my original algorithm, and a corporate charter for a holding company no one at Brightwell even knew existed. Virelight Systems AG. It sounded like a real company. It was a real company, registered, notarized, and backed by a bank account in Zurich that no one but me could access. The company had one purpose: to own my algorithm. I didn't name myself as the owner. That would have been too easy to trace. Instead, I routed it through a silent partner, Jonas Kruger, a former research partner from my Oxford days, now a cybersecurity consultant for the Swiss government. I once helped him rewrite an encryption protocol that saved his firm millions. He owed me. And more importantly, he understood silence. Under Virelight, I registered the full algorithm, the real one. Not the sanitized API shell Brightwell had been testing, but the evolving core, the recursive engine that could predict systemic collapses and optimize in real time across industries. The patent was filed under YPO protection, with authorship irrevocably tied to biometric confirmation. My voice, my retina scan, my encrypted signature. It was mine. Not Brightwell's, not Leon's, mine. But I didn't stop there. I started quietly licensing the code. 30 clients, scattered across Europe, Asia, and North America. Energy providers, fintech startups, municipal AI deployments. Each one signed a near-identical agreement, short, clean, ironclad. 3 critical clauses. No modification of core logic was permitted without Virelight's approval. Any removal of the original author from the attribution chain voided the license. Attempts to duplicate, relabel, or rebrand the code triggered an instant revocation across all instances globally. Brightwell was listed simply as Client ID 043, Internal Pilot Partner. Their license? A 180-day renewable shell, designed to look permanent, but secretly operating on a fixed countdown. They had no idea. Their legal team never even reviewed the deeper terms. They assumed the algorithm was native IP. After all, I worked there. Of course it belonged to them. They hadn't read the fine print. They hadn't even seen it. They didn't know the code they were using was a mask. Kestrel Light, I called it. It mimicked outputs, passed security checks, even scaled. But it lacked the adaptive layering, the full scope of the recursive system. They were testing a decoy. The real code? It lived far from their servers, in mirrored instances across 5 continents, and it answered to me alone. At 3:42 a.m., I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment and logged into the Virelight dashboard. 30 clients, green across the board. All active, all current, all mine. I clicked into Brightwell's profile. License ID 043A, expires in 14 days renewal request, none. I stared at the screen. No panic, no thrill. Just the slow, rising stillness of someone holding a blade beneath velvet. They didn't know their countdown had begun. I remembered the first time Leon ever spoke to me one-on-one. I just finished a 72-hour stress test of our predictive engine, the same one I later rewrote from scratch. He came into the lab with his sleeves rolled and said, "You're not flashy, Amelia, but your work's elegant. Dangerous even, like a scalpel. Back then, I thought it was a compliment. Now, I see it was a warning. He saw my sharpness. And like all men who want control, he decided he couldn't leave the knife in my hands. But he forgot something fundamental. A scalpel doesn't have to scream. It just needs the right moment to cut. It had been 3 years since I last heard his voice. Longer still since we'd looked each other in the eyes and seen anything but silence. But that morning, barely 5 hours after I'd stared down the ticking clock on Brightwell's stolen code, my inbox pinged with a message that felt like the ghost of a former life had come calling. Subject: Old story, new ending. From Julian Reyes' body. Just coffee. I'll listen more this time. He didn't say where. He didn't need to. The little cafe off Winthrop and 18th. The one we used to disappear into when the world got too sharp. He'd order the peppermint tea he never actually liked. I'd sit across from him with my laptop, always half distracted. He used to call it our parallel processing date. Now I was walking there alone, coat pulled tight, sky overcast, like it knew something was coming. Julian was already at the table when I arrived. Same weathered notebook in hand, same second-hand blazer, with the frayed cuff he refused to replace. Except now, it came with a press badge clipped to his lapel. Julian Reyes, Global Tech Correspondent, The Chronicle. He stood when he saw me, but didn't reach for a hug. Just nodded, then gestured toward the chair across from him. I sat. For a long time we didn't speak. The silence between us wasn't bitter. It was tired. The kind of silence that grows between people who once cared more than they could manage. "You look the same," he said finally. "Liar," I replied. He smirked. "Fair." The server came. I ordered black coffee. He, predictably, asked for peppermint tea. Old habits die quiet. Then he opened the notebook, but didn't write. "I'm covering Brightwell's upcoming IPO," he said, watching me. And I noticed something missing. I waited. "Your name." He didn't ask a question. He didn't have to. "They scrubbed me," I said simply. "After I gave them the final submission. They called it a restructure." Julian's jaw clenched. He looked away for a moment before tapping the table with his pen. "I remember when you missed your mom's funeral." My chest tightened. I hadn't expected him to go there. "You were working a blackout," he continued, "rerouting clusters to keep the grid online. Everyone said you saved the West Coast from collapse that night. But I knew—" He stopped, exhaled. "I knew it killed you." "It still does," I whispered. Julian leaned in. "I want to tell your story, Amelia. The real one. I want people to know what you gave, what they took, and how you—" "No." He blinked. "No? I'm not a story," I said. "I never was." "Sturdy." He stared at me, confused. I leaned forward. "I was the code, Julian. Not the headline, not the narrative. I was the heartbeat of the system, running beneath everything they built. They didn't just delete a name. They tried to delete the architecture." Julian looked stunned. "Then let them feel what happens when the code disappears." His voice had the same quiet conviction it used to have when he talked about justice, about truth, about printing things no one else would dare say. "Why now?" I asked. "Why reach out after all this time?" He didn't flinch. "Because I remember who you were before they tried to polish you down to a tool. You were fierce, and brilliant, and terrifying, and they're gambling on your silence. That's when I felt it. Not rage, not sorrow. Permission. To stop waiting. To stop hoping for credit or justice from people who only saw me as fuel." Julian's words weren't just nostalgia. They were ignition. He stood, slowly packing up his notebook. "I'm not asking for an interview," he said. "I'm offering a mirror, when you're ready to look in it." Then he left. I sat there for a long time. When I finally stood, the peppermint tea was untouched. The sky had darkened, and I knew what came next. Not a story, not a headline, a signal. One that would ripple through every system they thought they controlled. Because I wasn't the footnote they deleted. I was the root command. It started with a whisper in my chest. Not a thought, not even a word, just the faintest echo of something solid, something inevitable. The moment I reread Clause 17, that whisper became a heartbeat. I wasn't just holding proof. I was holding a trigger. The morning after my meeting with Julian, the sun rose, but I barely noticed. My apartment was a blur of shadow and half-drunk coffee cups. I had been up all night, scanning documents, highlighting phrases, cross-referencing timestamps like a forensic analyst in her own crime scene. Because that's what it was. A crime. They hadn't just fired me. They hadn't just deleted my name. They'd stolen my life's work, stripped me of authorship, and tried to bury the only part of me I had ever trusted to speak for itself. My code. But I had written a failsafe. Not just in the architecture. In the contract. I opened the Firelight vault and scrolled until I found it. License ID GO43A. The contract Brightwell had signed without hesitation, too arrogant or too hurried to read the fine print. They had assumed ownership was a default. I had designed it as a privilege. The contract opened slowly, line by line, on my screen. And there it was again. Just as I remembered it. Clause 17. Author Protection Provision. In the event that the original author is removed from her role in connection with the licensee through demonstrably unethical conduct, including but not limited to false attribution, unauthorized modification, or retaliatory dismissal, all rights and operational licenses revert immediately and automatically to the original author. No appeal, no board vote, no arbitration. Reversion is irrevocable. My cursor hovered over the clause. I didn't blink. This wasn't theory anymore. It was reality. They'd activated it the moment they submitted the patent with Leon's name. The clause was tied not to emotion, but to time. Cold, traceable time. So, I did what I always do when the world spins too fast. I built a case. I opened a fresh folder and began collecting the digital bones of my betrayal. Exhibit A. A screenshot of the patent submission interface. My name in the author field, submitted at 2:38 p.m. Exhibit B. Revision logs from the patent portal. Leon's name replacing mine at 2:44 p.m. Exhibit C. A forwarded internal email from a sympathetic engineer. Hey Amelia, just a heads up, your access to the repo was revoked. Did something happen? Exhibit D. A video recording of a Zoom meeting 2 days prior, where Leon says, "Once we file, I'll handle attribution." Nay. Exhibit E. My original signed IP log, with a creation date from 4 years prior. Each one felt like a scalpel slicing through the myth they'd wrapped around themselves. And then came the final blow. I pulled up the patent comparison tool and overlaid the version Leon submitted against my original. Identical. Down to the line spacing. He hadn't rewritten it. He hadn't even tweaked it. He had taken my exact document, signed over it, and submitted it in his name. I should have been crying. Instead, I laughed. Quietly, bitterly. Because it was so pathetic. After everything I had given them, after missing my mother's funeral to keep their systems online, after building the predictive engine that turned them into an industry darling, they still needed me. They just didn't want the world to see that. They wanted the brain without the body, the code without the name. But Clause 17 didn't care about their PR strategy. Clause 17 obeyed math. I encrypted the folder, labeled it CL17 full reversion, and ran a checksum across every document to generate a digital fingerprint. No one could say it was altered. No one could say it wasn't mine. Then I opened a secure line to my legal counsel in Geneva, Dr. Elodie Varnes, contract assassin, patent enforcer, and the woman who'd once described corporate licensing law as the closest thing we have to bloodless warfare. Her voice came through crystal clear. "You finally calling it in?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. Clause 17. I'm executing it. I'll prepare the reversion paperwork. We'll need the IP archive, the license metadata, and an official affidavit of unethical dismissal. I have all of it, I said. Of course you do, she replied. I'll have the preliminary injunction request ready by noon. Amelia, once this is filed, there's no going back. It'll hit their boardroom like a wrecking ball. I know, I whispered. That's the point. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, staring at the single desk lamp reflecting off my window. My reflection stared back, tired, sharp, steady. They had taken so much, but the one thing they could never claim, the thing I had buried in the fine print and sealed with foresight, they were about to lose forever. Because code doesn't forget. And neither do I. It arrived quietly. No fanfare, no flags, no flashing red warnings. Just a ping. New message. 1. From Sophie Langston. Subject. Attachment. Internal audio. Zophor Tuod. MP3. My pulse stilled. Sophie. The one person in Brightwell's legal department who always looked like she was waiting for the truth to surface. We were never close. Our conversations were limited to elevator rides, once exchanging dry commentary about the vending machine stealing our dollar bills. But Sophie had eyes like mine. She noticed things. And now, she had sent me this. No greeting, no context, just a file. My first instinct was to hesitate. Not because I was afraid of what might be in it, but because I already knew. Somewhere deep in my bones, I knew what this recording would be. The final nail. The hidden wire behind the curtain. I downloaded the file, then sat there with it on my screen, cursor hovering over play. My hands were steady, but my breath wasn't. I clicked. The recording began with low chatter, papers shuffling, the clink of ceramic mugs, probably those god-awful stone ones Leon insisted gave a Scandinavian touch to his boardroom aesthetic. Then his voice, unmistakable. So we've moved ahead with the filing. A pause. Then, yes, I know it was hers. A heavy silence followed, as if even the room had recoiled. Leon continued casually. Look, Amelia built the framework, there's no question, but she submitted it through company channels, on company time. That gives us ownership, technically. Technically. That word made my fingers curl into fists. Another voice, uncertain. Probably Bennett from legal. But the authorship field, she's already submitted it under her name. That timestamp's part of the record. Leon chuckled. And we updated it. The submission portal logs can be overwritten. No one outside our system will know unless she files a formal complaint. Even then, we'll drown her in response motions. Another silence. Then Bennett again. There's that clause she had. The author retention one, clause 17. Leon's voice sharpened. I've read it, and yes, it's binding. If she can prove she was fired unethically, the rights revert. But let's be realistic. Proving unethical dismissal? That's a war. One we're prepared to fight. We'll spin a narrative about restructuring, underperformance, whatever works. The legal noise alone will exhaust her. Then came the words that stung deeper than any knife. She's smart, but she's not built for this. We'll just bury her under paperwork. There was a moment after that. Pure empty air. Like everyone in the room was absorbing the cruelty of what he'd just said and deciding not to challenge it. And then the tape clicked off. I sat there, frozen. Not with rage, with clarity. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't some calculated business move. It was erasure, meticulously planned. And they didn't think I'd fight. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I wasn't loud. Because I didn't shout in meetings or demand credit. Because I was the quiet woman behind the screen, the one who solved problems without fanfare. They mistook quiet for weak. They mistook restraint for surrender. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one who held everything. I reopened the reversion packet I'd been assembling and added one final exhibit. Exhibit F. Audio recording. Internal confirmation of authorship and retaliatory intent. Then I renamed the file. Full submission, final AMK. I uploaded it to Elodie's legal portal, encrypted with a triple hash and biometric confirmation. The reversion was now ready to be filed, and with it, a motion for an injunction, a public statement of authorship, and legal notification to every single licensee currently using the code. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. The silence in my apartment had changed. It wasn't lonely anymore. It was loaded. Alive. Because now, I didn't just have a license clause, I had a confession. And somewhere inside Brightwell's glass and steel fortress, a man who thought he was untouchable was about to find out what happens when you try to bury a woman who built the ground beneath your feet. The cursor blinked. One simple button. Initiate license revocation. It pulsed softly on my screen like a heartbeat. This was the moment. The culmination of 10 years of work, betrayal, silence, and strategy. Clause 17 had been activated. The legal evidence was airtight. The system was waiting for my signal. And I couldn't click. Not yet. Because on the screen next to that one, the one I'd tried not to look at, I saw the numbers. 30 active licensees, 12 countries, over 11,000 organizations tied directly or indirectly to my code. Logistics systems, insurance models, supply chains, municipal infrastructure. I had built something that reached far beyond Brightwell, something that mattered to people who had never even heard my name. People who had just wanted better, faster, more ethical systems. And if I pulled the plug, if I revoked the license, they would pay the price before anyone else. Not Leon. Not his boardroom of suits. It would be the hospitals relying on real-time patient load predictions, the shipping teams optimizing freight for food deliveries, the educators using my model to distribute learning resources to underfunded districts. I stared at the list until the lines blurred. Was this justice? Or was this vengeance with collateral damage? I got up and paced, the wooden floor groaning beneath my feet. My hands were cold. My throat ached with unshed tension. My mother's photo sat on my desk, smiling, slightly crooked in her frame, as if even now she wasn't quite sure what I was doing. They stole everything, I whispered aloud. But the silence didn't answer. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Amelia Kessler? A voice asked. Female, measured. Yes. This is Elena Matsuoka, COO of Terralink Infrastructure. We're one of your Virelight licensees. We've never spoken, but I think we need to. My stomach dropped. I'm listening. There was a pause. Then, we received a communication today from Brightwell, not from legal, directly from their Strategic Partnerships Office. They claimed your algorithm was being reabsorbed under exclusive corporate ownership and that our license was, quote, voided by reclassification. They offered us a renewal at 10 times the current rate, effective immediately. My blood went cold. They can't do that, I said, voice tightening. You're protected under international IP law. The license is still active and enforceable. I know, Elena said, which is why I thought you should know they're reaching out to other licensees too, pressuring them, threatening discontinuation. They're trying to cut you off from your own network. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was blackmail. They were using my name, my code, my silence, to extort the people who had trusted me, trusted that I'd built something ethical, transparent, protected. They were weaponizing my work. I sat back down. Thank you for telling me, I said. I believe in what you built, she replied. But if you stay silent, they'll rewrite it all. Your story, your impact, everything. She hung up. I stared at the monitor again. Initiate license revocation was still blinking. Soft. Innocent. Like it wasn't a blade. But now I saw it clearly. This wasn't punishment. It was prevention. I whispered to the air, to the code, to the memory of every night I'd poured myself into a machine that never once said thank you. No more. Then I clicked. A window opened. Please confirm. You are initiating revocation of global licensing permissions under Clause 17. This action cannot be undone. I placed my finger on the biometric pad. The screen pulsed. One confirmation. One signature. One whisper into the machine. Let it begin. And then the signal spread. It began quietly, not with a siren, not with a bang, just a hesitation. The kind of delay a machine never makes, unless something deep within it has changed, something unseen, something final. At exactly 2:42 p.m., the countdown I had initiated completed its silent journey through the system cores. And then, silence. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by open monitors, cables coiled like vines, coffee cold beside me. My fingers were pressed to the keyboard, not moving. I didn't have to touch anything now. The switch had been flipped. The world just didn't know it yet. But they would. I refreshed one of my side screens. The public stream from Sistema Global Technologies, Brightwell's prize partner. The living case study, they called it. Their show pony. Their servers had been running on a full integration of the algorithm, my algorithm, for over 6 months. A trial made public, praised in every tech column, glorified by shareholders, televised like it was a moon landing. The stream had been live for 189 consecutive days, and I was about to end it. The video feed showed the nerve center in all its sleek excess, a panoramic view of the operations floor, curved LED panels, wall-to-wall data visualizations, predictive trend graphs curling like ribbons of light, rows of engineers in matching blazers, sipping from company-issued bottles, monitoring thousands of variables in serene control. And then it happened. Subtle at first. A data graph froze mid-update. A latency figure stopped blinking. A display line, forecasting national supply chain shifts, flatlined across the screen. One operator tapped his console. Another leaned in, eyebrows drawn together. The stream had no audio, but it didn't need it. You could feel the panic in the movement. Chairs scraped back. Hands waved. Technicians began speaking rapidly. Some rose from their seats. Others jabbed fingers at displays as new errors began cascading down the panels. Error, core license, key unrecognized authorization. Invalid, system, halt initiated reversion code, clause 17, Virelight Systems, ag originator. Amelia Kessler. There it was. My name. Not erased, not footnoted. Broadcast, in bold red letters. A system-wide signature, embedded in every failure message, every crash log. Not to gloat, but to reclaim. Because they had said I didn't belong, that I wasn't made for this game. So I made the game mine. The camera shifted suddenly, now showing the upper mezzanine, the observation deck. And there he was. Leon Mercer. CEO. Mastermind. Thief. Dressed in his navy suit with the thin gold tie, sleeves rolled as if to imply urgency. He was gripping the railing, knuckles white. A headset clamped to his ear. His eyes locked on the screens below, on the flood of red alerts, the rising chaos, the absolute unthinkable collapse. He barked an order. A technician handed him a tablet. He scanned it, and then it hit him. I saw the moment it happened. The recognition, the realization that this wasn't just a system failure, it wasn't sabotage, it wasn't a bug. It was me. He stiffened. His mouth moved, forming the word he couldn't bring himself to say aloud. I leaned closer to the screen, whispering it for him. Amelia! The operator below him pointed toward a central panel, one showing the code signature. Authority. Amelia Kessler. Reversion active. There was nothing left to deny. This wasn't a glitch. This was a reckoning. The stream glitched once, then again. And then, the feed cut entirely. A black screen. A small message appeared. We're experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by. I sat there in silence. Not triumphant, not gleeful, just still. Because I knew what this meant. Not just for Brightwell, but for everyone watching. The algorithm had become their foundation. Now they would see what happens when you build on a stolen soul, and when the soul comes home. At first, there was nothing. Just quiet. Just the faint hum of my apartment walls, the slow drip of condensation on the windowpane, and the aftershock of what I had done settling into my bones like winter. I sat motionless, half draped in a blanket, laptop glowing beside me like an ember that refused to die out. I hadn't spoken a word to anyone since I pressed confirm. I hadn't needed to. The algorithm had spoken for me, and the world had heard. By 7 a.m., my name was everywhere, not hidden in a footnote, not buried in source code, everywhere. The alerts came in waves: news apps, email blasts, mentions, screenshots forwarded from colleagues I hadn't heard from in years. Even my old university advisor, Dr. Patel, sent me a message with one word. Finally. The headlines were breathless. The woman who shut down an empire. Financial Times. How one clause toppled Brightwell's billion-dollar IPO. Bloomberg. The silent revolution of Amelia Kessler. Wired UK. Exclusive. The CEO who stole an algorithm now faces global legal fallout. Reuters. And the ticker told the rest of the story. Brightwell Technologies shares drop 42%. IPO withdrawn. SEC to investigate patent irregularities. The media wanted blood. And for once, it wasn't mine. I watched from the shadows as they tore into Leon, first with questions, then with teeth. Every outlet wanted a statement, a soundbite, a tearful apology from the man who thought he owned everything and ended up exposed by a line of code written in a language he never bothered to learn. On CNBC, a panel of tech investors debated how a brilliant but invisible woman could have been erased so thoroughly, and whether the board would survive the scandal. On Twitter, I was turned into a symbol. Sark Clause 17 trended for 14 hours. People made infographics breaking down the license contract. Women in STEM shared stories of credit stolen and ideas passed off as someone else's. Developers posted memes of Leon Mercer staring at a dead screen captioned, "You forgot the update came with consequences." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt detached. This was never about spectacle. This was never about revenge for clicks. This was about truth, about ownership, about not disappearing so quietly you forget you ever existed. Then the press requests started. CNN, NPR, the BBC, TED. Everyone wanted my face, my voice, my tears. I didn't reply to any of them, not because I was afraid, because I had already spoken, in the only language that ever mattered to people like Leon. Code. The one place they couldn't lie. I wasn't interested in redemption arcs or media tours. I didn't want to be rebranded as a hero in someone else's narrative. They had taken my name. Now I was giving it back, on my terms. And so, when The Guardian asked for a quote, just one line, I obliged. No pleasantries, no backstory, just truth. I didn't destroy him. He did that himself when he forgot where the real power lies. That was all. No signature, no title, no photo. But that sentence did what no headline could. It spread. It landed like a thunderclap. It was printed on posters, plastered across Instagram, read aloud by protesters outside Brightwell's HQ, graffitied onto the tech incubator Leon had funded in Palo Alto. Real power lies here. They wrote it on sidewalks, under bridges, across whiteboards at women's hackathons. And then the stories came pouring in. Young engineers, middle-aged researchers, quiet geniuses from labs and basements who had watched their names vanish beneath someone else's credit. Each one wrote to me like I was a ghost they had always hoped was real. I read every message. I didn't respond, not yet, because I wasn't done being quiet. Not until silence became its own kind of authority. That evening, Julian called again. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail, his voice low, steady. You changed everything, even if they never give you a statue, even if they try to twist the story back in their favor. You changed the damn rules, Amelia. I cried for the first time, not because I was sad, because I believed him, because I had spent so long writing myself out of the spotlight that I forgot what it felt like to be seen. Now I wasn't just seen, I was remembered. And the world? It was rewriting itself in my image. They said I should call it something catchy, that I should name it after myself, slap a bold serif font across a building, and let the headlines spin their final arc. I said no. I didn't want my name carved in stone. I wanted it remembered in silence. So when the center finally opened, there was no launch party, no keynote, no influencers posing in front of banners, no donation tiers engraved in metal, just a simple announcement in a corner of a local paper. A new collaborative center for innovation, education, and ethical tech development opens on the eastern edge of the city. Open to all. No resume required. That was it. People still found it. You'd walk past it without knowing. A single-story brick building, once used for storing newsprint rolls, now quietly humming with servers and breath and the murmur of minds colliding. The official title, registered for tax purposes, was the Kessler Center for Collaborative Innovation. But no one ever called it that. They just called it the center. No hierarchy, no founders' photos in the hallway. Just one rule, written in the lobby in white paint on raw concrete. Every idea belongs to everyone who shaped it. That was our promise. No names deleted, no authorship blurred, no stolen brilliance masked by convenience or politics or ego. We began with 10 people. A teenage coder who built adaptive learning modules on her phone. A robotics dropout who taught himself mechanical design from YouTube. A retired librarian who understood information flow better than most engineers. They came with notebooks and trauma, with dreams and no funding, and we started building. And then more came. Now we are over 300, spread across multiple cities, all linked by a shared manifesto. Open credit. Open access. Open legacy. No one reports to me. I'm not the CEO. I'm not Dr. Kessler or founder in residence. I'm just Amelia. Sometimes the woman making coffee in the kitchen. Sometimes the one rewiring the routers at midnight. Sometimes the stranger in the corner of the auditorium, listening while someone else takes the stage. Because here, I don't give speeches. I give space. We have no staff directory. But in every project release, in every research paper, in every prototype unveiled at our quarterly exhibitions, the contributors are listed. Not alphabetically, not by seniority, but in order of their first touch. Who started the first sketch? Who asked the critical question? Who stayed late to fix the bug? Their names stay. Always. Because if there's one thing I promised myself after they erased me, it's that no one else would feel like a ghost of their own genius. There's one room I visit every day. It's simple, quiet, soft with plants and light. A small wooden bench faces a wall of hand-drawn circuit maps, each annotated in blue pen, the way my mother used to mark up my childhood homework with encouragement instead of correction. In the center of the room, on the back of the bench, a brass plate reads, "In memory of Margaret Kessler, who taught me to plant truth, not proof. She was never part of this industry, but she was always the foundation. She taught me that power doesn't scream, it builds, it listens, it lasts." Some days, new visitors come in, sit on that bench, without knowing who she was. They just sit, think, breathe. And somehow, that's enough. Outside, the city moves on. Markets fluctuate. Another startup goes public. Another CEO trends. The world still forgets, rewrites, spins. But here, inside these walls, names stay attached to the things they create. Not for glory, for history. Sometimes at night, I walk the quiet corridors of the center, past the project boards, the collaborative tables still scattered with notes, the echo of laughter in the break room from earlier that day. And I listen, not for applause, but for the sound of people being heard. That is the real algorithm, the one I couldn't patent, the one they couldn't steal, because it's written in every voice that never again has to ask, will they remember me? They will, and they'll never have to speak my name to know who made that possible.